Hello, everyone. I hope that you're doing well, that you're safe and with your loved ones. We're so excited to have you with us today, and we've got lots of thrilling things in store for you today. But before we get started, let me just briefly introduce myself. As some of you may already know, my name is Victoria. I'm the outreach coordinator for the Education USA network here in Ukraine. And we are, of course, a global network of the US State of Department, which consists of over 435 international student advising centers in more than 180 countries. We are the official source on US higher education, offering always accurate, comprehensive, and unbiased information about opportunities to study at accredited colleges and universities in the United States. Thank you so much for being here with us for a session dedicated specifically to mastering your US graduate school application. If you're interested in applying for a master's or PhD program in the United States and want to find out how to find the right program and university for you, what funding is available to international students, and how to put together a competitive application package, then today is your lucky day. Joining me today is our wonderful guest speaker, Jennifer Hanther, Assistant Dean of Graduate and Postdoctoral Studies at Rice University, who will share some tips on how to apply and get funds to study in the United States, as well as talk about opportunities to work in the United States through OPT and CPT programs. Before we get started, please do not hesitate to reach out to us and put your questions in the chat. I'll be monitoring all of your questions and will be sure that we answer all of them at the end of the session. Jennifer, it's an honor to have you with us today. The floor is yours. Please take it away.
Thank you so much, Victoria, and thank you to Alexander for doing your magic behind the scenes. I'm really glad that you are here today, and I'm glad to be spending this evening with you so that we can talk more about the U.S. grad school application and what life is like as a graduate student. I'm also joined here today by two of our current grad students that you'll hear from towards the end of this presentation. So Esther and Manuel are here. They are both current Ph.D. students here at Rice University in Houston, Texas. And I am going to go ahead and see if I can move to the next slide here, and hopefully you all can see my slide deck. Perfect. And so what I really like about this picture, just to give you a little bit of information about Rice, if you've never heard of us, we are a small private research institution in Houston, Texas. So we are close to the beach, not too far from the Galveston beach area. We also are really close to downtown Houston. So you can see the Rice campus kind of here in this picture. Over to the left, there is, of course, downtown Houston. And then all the way past this park is the Texas Medical Center. It's the largest medical center in the world. So if you're interested in maybe becoming a doctor or a healthcare researcher, it's a really great place to work and to study. So a little bit more about, let me go back one. About me, if you'd like to write down my contact information, please feel free to do so. I am always happy to talk more about graduate programs broadly, about life in the United States, and what it's like to be a graduate student. So please do reach out to me. Esther and Manuel that are here today are also graduate student ambassadors. So if you are thinking, well, maybe I'd like to hear from a current grad student, somebody who is living it, who is in the thick of it, as we say, you can reach out to any of our grad student ambassadors through that first link on my screen there. And really, you can look for a student that's in any field of study at Rice, and they can talk to you about their journey to grad school and what it's like maybe to study those things in the US. So just to dive in, so there's a lot we can talk about here with graduate study and with the different things that you might be considering. One thing I did want to talk about first is what is a PhD? And we'll talk about master's degrees as well. There's lots of different kinds of master's degrees and graduate degrees that you can get. I did want to start with an introduction on the PhD, which is the highest degree you can achieve. It is a Doctor of Philosophy. This is a degree that you are going to write a thesis for generally. And so you're going to be doing a lot of research and creating original ideas and content about these topics that you want to investigate. typically your PhD degree is going to be focused on a specific discipline. So for example, Manuel, I think you are a chemist, you are in chemistry, and so you're pursuing this degree to research original ideas in chemistry. A PhD can be a really great degree to get if you are thinking about a research career, if you maybe want to be a professor one day, or you want to go into industry and use your knowledge to further that industry. As a PhD, as a doctor student, you are going to be the worldwide authority on that specific topic, on that specific area of study. So this is a really great way for us to push our boundaries of human understanding forward through this research. One thing that people don't know is that a PhD will pay you to go to graduate school. So that's really important to know. In the US, typically the PhD is a fully funded degree. And what that means is that you will not pay tuition. Your tuition will be waived, and you will be paid a stipend that supports your cost of living. And essentially that stipend is paid to you because you are doing research work. So a little bit more about the PhD funding. So what does that cover? We talked about the tuition being waived. We talked about the stipend that you're going to be paid, that you're getting a paycheck. Typically, PhD funding does not cover room and board. It does not cover health insurance, for example, but you might be offered a subsidy, and it doesn't cover student fees. But most of your expenses are going to be covered by your PhD funding. And you would be paid because, again, you are doing research work for the university. You are working with a faculty member to do this work, and that's why you're being paid for it. Oop, if I can get to the next slide here. Okay, so PhD stipends, what does that look like? If you're wondering how much you might get paid as a PhD student, at Rice, stipends start at about $32,000 a year, but they're often higher in specific departments. So something to consider there for sure. If you're trying to figure out where you might want to attend school, know that stipends can vary very differently between different universities or even different programs of study within the same university. And so you want to make sure that when you're looking at these stipends, you're getting a competitive look at this. Okay, I'm just gonna skip ahead really quick and make sure that this is the right. Yes. Okay, perfect. Let me go back. Okay. And so there's some differences between PhDs and master's degrees. And so for the PhD, who should get a PhD? Folks that want to be professors or faculty members one day. We've talked a little bit about this. There are many different degree options. And so if you are thinking about a master's degree is going to be a great fit as well. If you're thinking, I want to go into industry and I want to earn a little bit more money, that's going to be a degree that will help you further your own career and also give you more expertise in a specific area. So these are very different degrees, but again, they are going to be really dependent on what you want to do and what your career goals, what you want those career goals to be. So really think carefully about your why you want to go to graduate school, why you want to get a specific degree, and ultimately what you want to do with your life. I think it's really important to think about your goals overall and what you're going to accomplish and where you're going to be happiest. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit here. And so again, really, really important to find your why. Grad school can be a significant time expense. So PhD degree may take 4 to 6 years to complete. A master's degree can be completed much quicker. It can be completed in 1 to 2 years. And so really you'll want to think about what you want to accomplish ultimately. And if you are going to be happy in a specific area, if you're going to be spending just 1 year somewhere, I think it's a little bit easier to think about, okay, I'm only going to be here a year and then I'm going to accomplish the next thing. PhD degrees will take a little bit longer. So you really want to make sure wherever you go to study, it's the right fit for your research. And you want to make sure that you're happy there. You're happy with the people that you are working with. That's really important. Master's degrees can also be a significant monetary investment. So in the US, not a lot of master's degrees are funded, and there's not a lot of scholarships offered for them. So if you're going to take that investment and take the next step and pursue a master's degree, you really want to be sure that you are doing it for the right reasons, and it's going to help you accomplish the goals that you want to accomplish. Okay, so admissions for PhD, I'm also going to talk about admissions for masters. Admissions for masters, let's talk about that first. Typically, those are decisions that are made by maybe one person or a small group of people. They're probably making decisions for a number of programs at the same time. And for PhD admissions, it's a little bit different. Admissions committees for PhD, those are program specific. Typically, these committees are decentralized. What that means is every program is going to make its own admissions decisions. For PhD, this is typically a group of junior faculty, and they are hungry to build their lab. They really want to make sure that they get the right students for their lab that are interested in this research. And so they're going to be really hungry to read these applications. Admissions for PhD can also be structured to meet program needs. So for example, chemistry, if you're an organic chemist, but the program is really focused on different kinds of chemistry, that's not going to be a good fit for you. So you really need to think about who's on the admissions committee, who your audience is for your application. You may need to educate them, both for master's and PhD. They may not be familiar with your university. They may not be familiar with your grading scale. But what you really want to do is talk about those things and help them understand. And this really helps you get further in your application process. It also helps you help the people that come behind you so that the faculty are better educated about these things. Admissions models are really different for master's and PhD. For master's degrees, they may take 3 or 4 cohorts a year, say. So your timeline might be very abbreviated for the application process. You could apply certainly for multiple start times during the year for a master's program. And you typically are going to be admitted as a cohort, and you take your classes, and that's the focus of the master's program. For a PhD, there's a couple different models. And so cohort-based admissions are, pretty common in a PhD program. What that means is you're admitted to the program. You're going to have time afterwards to maybe do rotations in different laboratories or research groups. And you'll have time to find an advisor, a PI that you work with. Because for PhD, the PI is the most important relationship that you have in graduate school. There's also a model called direct admission. And so if you're pursuing a research degree, like a degree like a Master of Science or a PhD, you may be asked or required to build a relationship with a faculty member or a number of faculty members during the application process. And that faculty member is going to advocate for you to the admissions committee so that it's advocating on your behalf. So there's 2 different models, and it's really important to think about how you want to reach out to faculty. It's less important for a master's degree like an MBA, say, to reach out to faculty. You don't need to do that for those degrees. But if you're doing a research master's like a Master of Science or a Master of Arts, where you're going to be doing thesis work and working with the faculty member, that is very important. So where to apply, I think this is a really important decision for any student. And I really would encourage you not to get too distracted by a program name. So maybe you are sitting in this webinar today and you're thinking, I really want to get a Master's of Global Affairs. Don't get too tied to searching for global affairs programs. Really think about your career goals and what you want to do, and think about, what is another similar program that I could be happy in that's going to help me accomplish those goals. That's the most important thing. So global affairs is great. International relations, international affairs. These are all names of programs that are, and so don't get too pigeonholed by the name of the program. Especially for students that are thinking about a research degree, so a research master's or PhD. Again, the single most important thing is for you to find someone who is doing work that you can see yourself doing, that you are going to be happy doing. So your PI, your primary investigator, that's going to be a really important relationship. Look for people that are going to be supportive of you. We talk a lot about community in graduate school, and I think that's really important. You may be looking at a lot of different schools, and the environments can be very different. And so you really want to talk to a lot of people about what your experience is going to be like at that institution. The best way to do that, I think, is to talk to current graduate students. in any program that you're considering, reach out to graduate students. Many laboratories or research groups or programs have lists of their students online. You should feel free to reach out to any of them and ask your questions about what life is like in that program. You really want to see that students are supported and are happy, that they care for each other, that it's not a cutthroat competitive environment. And you want to be able to see yourself there. One other thing that I would, piece of advice I would give you, if you're thinking about a research degree, it's really important to look for schools that have multiple people, multiple professors doing the work that you want to do. And so what I mean by this is, if you you have your heart set on going to one university and work with one professor, but that professor maybe isn't taking students or doesn't have funding for those students, you're going to be out of luck. So you really want to look for a place where you think, this place has 3 to 5 people I would be happy working for. I think I could see myself here and working for any of these people, and it would be okay. So really think carefully about the community aspect of things for sure. I think for so many of us, we focus on academics and rankings and where is the best place to be. Certainly rankings can be important. The rankings can be an important indicator of where a university falls and what their strengths are. But for me, and when I think about, going to graduate school, the most important thing is go to a place that's going to support you, that's going to help you not only during graduate school, but after you leave that program. What can they help you do? Can they help you network and get certain connections? So really be thoughtful about this and where you want to end up, short-term or long-term. Okay, so generally what you need to apply is listed here. For any graduate program in the United States, you're going to be asked for some combination of these materials. Certainly your transcripts, we'd love to have a record of everywhere you attended. I know it can be really tricky, depending on where you are, to get copies of these transcripts. And US institutions know that. So just be upfront with them and let them know if you're facing some kind of challenge in getting transcripts, let them know about it and they will work with you. And at the very least, if they don't, then you'll know that that's maybe a place that you don't want to be, that's not going to be supportive of you. So let them know what you're facing and they will work with you. The GRE, the Graduate Record Examination, is a relatively common test still that's required for US institutions, the graduate school. It's becoming less common though, so it's not quite as common as it used to be. We'll talk more about the GRE, but I would think carefully about whether you would like to take this test or not. Application fee is a common part of the US grad application. My advice is to ask for fee waivers. It will not count against you if you ask for one. The worst thing that they can say is no. And it's really important to save yourself a little bit of money. I love a good deal. I always like to find a good deal. And so wherever you can ask for these waivers, make sure that you do, because grad school, the application process can be expensive. Especially, if you've got to take the English language proficiency tests, if you're planning on taking the GRE. So save yourself some money where you can. Letters of recommendation are really important. We'll talk more about these, but this is really an opportunity for you to have others speak on your behalf to the admissions committee. So for any graduate program that you apply to, think carefully about who you want your recommenders to be and what you would like them to focus on in their letters. And we'll talk more about that as well. Personal statement or statement of purpose, this is the most important part of your application because this is the part you have the most control over. At a certain point, the academics are done, your grades are the way they are, everything is kind of set with your test scores, but there's a lot you can say in the personal statement and a lot you can talk about to the admissions committee, and we'll get to that momentarily as well. Diversity statement or a GRIT statement is becoming more common on US applications. And I believe we'll talk about this as well. But really, this is just a chance for you to, again, address an admissions committee and talk more about yourself. Anytime you have space on the application to talk a little bit more to the admissions committee, I encourage you to take it. They want to hear from you. They want to get a well-rounded picture of who you are. So definitely take these opportunities as they come up. CV or resume. So this is going to be a pretty common feature of US grad applications as well. These documents are a little bit different. And so a CV is going to be more academic in nature. It's going to be a longer document. So most of the time, your resume should be one page, 2 max for a resume. For a CV, it can be 3 or 4 pages. If you have worked with faculty members before, you know that many of them have CVs that go up to 20 pages or beyond because they've built these long careers full of activities. So don't be afraid to talk a lot about your academics in the CV and talk about your research if you've done research. For the resume, it's really more about your history as maybe an employee or a student, and really more just focused on the technical details. And we'll talk more about that later. If you're planning on a research degree, it is encouraged to talk about your research experience. This is not required. You don't need to have research experience to go to a PhD, but if you are thinking about it and you know it's going to be a long-term degree, it's good to get some practice in research to determine if you really want to do this for the next 4 to 6 years at least of your life. And so research experience can take a lot of forms. Oftentimes students will have papers that they've worked on, conference presentations, anything that's related to your research that you can show is really great to do so on the application. Typically you do this in the CV, but you can upload additional supplemental materials. So really up to you how you want to show that experience. We also encourage fellowship applications. So Education USA are going to be your experts in all things fellowships and all things applying to grad school. Work with them to determine what fellowships you may be eligible for, to determine how to apply for those fellowships. Fulbright would be a great example if you're eligible for Fulbright or for opportunity funds. Institutions know what these honors are, and they're going to look at them very favorably. So again, work with Education USA and just keep clear about your goals and tell them what you want to accomplish. If you're an international student, which I suspect many of you are, you will be asked for English language proficiency scores. For Rice University, that is TOEFL, IELTS, or Duolingo. We do not have a preference on which one of these tests you take. It is totally up to you. We are happy to have any of these tests. You already know that I love a good deal. So if it was me, I might go for Duolingo, as I have heard that that is a more affordable option. But again, totally up to you on what you want to take here. And again, work with Education USA on these tests. Plenty of test prep materials are out there to help you, and they can help you coach through these tests and what to expect. Okay, I think now it is a deeper dive into some of these components. Yes, so the GRE, Graduate Record Examination, this is still required at many institutions. It's becoming less common, as we talked about. And there's a lot of reasons for this, but the primary one being the coronavirus pandemic. And so we know it's been hard for people to take those tests, and there's a lot of reasons for why we're waiving it. But at Rice University, this is broadly waived this year. There's a lot of weird language, though, I think, when you're searching graduate applications or graduate programs. If you've already been in this process, you may have seen some of this language already. And so you really should think about what the program means when it says a GRE might be waived or encouraged or strongly encouraged. And it is my understanding that if a GRE is waived for a university, that probably means they're not going to look at those scores at all. So even if you were to submit scores that you're proud of, it may not be part of your application that they look at entirely. If a program says that scores are encouraged or strongly encouraged, it is my understanding that they probably want to see those scores, that they're hoping that you submit those. And for whatever reason, they don't want to commit to saying that. So if you can take the GRE, if you have scores that you're proud of, and if they're saying that the test is encouraged, we would recommend that you take this test. If it says it's waived, it's really up to you. If you have scores that you're proud of, certainly you should submit them in case the program would look at those as a supplementary material. However, you probably don't need to. So really up to you. Again, Education USA is going to be the experts in this. They're going to have resources for you to practice this test before you take it, should you choose to. Work with them and let them know what your plans are so that they can help coach you through that process. If you are trying to figure out what a good score is, it's really hard to say. For a master's program, it's a little bit easier because those programs, when they're doing admissions, they're very focused on data, really data-driven and looking at applications. For PhD, it's a much more holistic process. It's really more about research fit. So the GRE is not quite as important for PhD because they're really more looking for your experience and kind of what you want to do with your research. But it never hurts to ask. And so master's programs typically will provide that information to you in terms of what band of GRE scores do most applicants, do they see for most applicants that are admitted to their institution. Recommendation letters, I think, are really, really important. And so be thoughtful about these letters. For whatever program that you're applying to, your recommenders are speaking to the admissions committee on your behalf. So pick people who know you well. You don't want to ask a professor that might be famous in their field if they don't know you well, because they're ultimately not going to write a letter that's as impactful. Pick people who can talk about your strengths, your research potential in graduate school, all of the great unique qualities that make you you. Typically for recommendation letters for PhD, we want to see at least one from a faculty member. If you can get more, that's great, but at least one for a PhD. For masters, it's very different. You do not need faculty members to write your recommendation letters, but certainly they can. If you are already working, it's great to have a letter from an employer or a colleague, something like that. But it should never be like a family member or a friend. It should always be somebody that is some kind of mentor or advisor or leader to you. Sometimes you can submit more than the requirement. So if you have 5 people that want to speak for you, that's great. And you could ask them all, and they would be welcome to submit their letters. And at least at Rice, we would be happy to take more than the required 3. Just waiting for the next slide here. There we go. All right, we talked about this already. I'm going to skip to the next slide. One thing I would recommend when you're asking your recommenders for letters, so think carefully again about who you want to have write these letters. Typically, if it's somebody that you know well, you could get a meeting with them and sit down for coffee. I would talk about ultimately what you want to do, what schools you're thinking about applying to. And these are going to be details that give people a better idea of what you want to do in grad school, and that's going to help them write a better letter. After that meeting, or if you can't get a meeting, send them an email, put a bulleted highlight reel of all of the great things that you've ever done in the body of this email and talk about yourself. I know that can be really hard for a lot of us to kind of brag about ourselves and all of the great things that we've done, but it's really important in this instance to do that and let your letter writers know what you've accomplished and what you're excelling at and what you'd like to achieve in the future. I think it's a great idea to attach your resume or your CV so that they have more information to draw from. And I also think it's a good idea if you have a draft of your statement of purpose to attach that as well, because that's going to give them a better idea of what you're ultimately wanting to do. And they're going to write a better letter because of it. Okay, good rec letters should introduce the letter writer and their connection to you. Let the committee know the impact that they've had on you for how long they've known you. And then really be compelling. This is a letter that's going to help sell you and sell your accomplishments to the admissions committee. I don't like wording it that way, but that's essentially what we're doing is this person's going to be your speaker, your advocate. And so anything that they can do to tell the admissions committee who you are as a person is going to be a great, great, great thing for your grad school applications. Okay, I think I'm going to skip ahead a little bit because we've spent a little bit of time. I'll try and go through this pretty quickly, but CV is going to be a longer document that details your academic career, essentially, and your suitability for a research career. Make sure that you're getting a lot of eyes on all of your materials before you submit them. You really want to make sure everything is proofread carefully, and also that it is accurate and up to date. You don't want to have a dated CV or a dated resume, depending on whatever you're working on. When you're reaching out to your recommenders, when you're applying to grad school, make sure everything is up to date and ready to go. Oh my goodness. I talk a lot about the CV in this presentation. Okay, statement of purpose or personal statement. I'm going to move just a little bit faster so that we can get to questions and so that our grad students can speak a little bit about their experience as well. Statement of purpose, personal statement. I really want to emphasize that this is the most important part of the grad school application because you have total control over this. Like we said, at a certain point, your academic record is kind of set, but the statement of purpose is something that you can ultimately craft and tailor to the programs that you're applying to. There are a couple terms that you will hear thrown around. Sometimes universities use these terms interchangeably. Statement of purpose is the one that's most common. We call it the SOP. There's also a personal statement, which I have heard used more for social sciences and humanities fields. So statement of purpose generally is a document that's going to address your academic interests, why you're pursuing this degree. The personal statement, if used in the humanities, social sciences world, is really more about you as a person and how your life experiences have shaped you and have prepared you for graduate study. And so you'll really want to think carefully. You may be asked for both of these documents. You may be asked for only one of them. You may be asked for neither, and you may be asked for an essay that addresses a specific thing. So really you want to pay careful attention to what you're being asked, and you're going to ask any follow-up questions to the department directly so that if there is a question, they can address it for you and that you can know kind of how to approach these documents. But really the personal statement is going to be how you think and write and how you're getting ready for grad school. And the statement of purpose is really more about that you can write clearly, that you can write competently, because as our grad students here will tell you that grad school is mostly writing. You're going to be doing way more writing than you have ever thought about. So really kind of show the committee that you can write clearly and competently in this document. Let me just skip ahead really quick. Yeah. So it should be school or discipline specific. Every school that you apply to, every program that you apply to, you want to make sure this document is tailored exactly to the program you're applying to. You want to talk about your journey to this point. So when I talk about the statement of purpose in particular, what I advise students to do is say, okay, how did I get to this point? What is the spark that led me here? How did I get interested in this field? The middle should be all about what you want to accomplish while you're in graduate school. So who do you want to work with? This is a place to name names of faculty members, or if you're going for a master's degree, this is a place to talk about why you're going to study this topic and ultimately what you want to do. And then you want to end with, after grad school, after the program is over, what are you hoping to accomplish with your life? What are you hoping that this degree helps you with? These are really important things that you'll want to outline in your essays. You have to answer the question of why this program. Why do you want to study here? And why do you want to study in this field? So really think carefully about how you're going to frame this document as well. Show your command of language. And what I mean by this is say as much as you can with as few words as possible. Be really compelling and intentional with your word choices, and make sure that your opening statement and your closing statement are very strong and memorable. And then I get this question a lot, like if I have a bad semester, or, I didn't do well in this class, should I address that? I think we all have hard days. We all have hard semesters. Certainly you can address your concerns, keep it brief, and move on. And really what you want to focus on is showing your incredible potential, because you all have such incredible, unique potential. And that's what you want to talk about the most. Diversity or grit statement. This is more and more common in US graduate applications. And so really, when I hear from international students about this, they say, does this apply to me? Should I be answering this question? And like I said, every time that there's a blank space on the application to talk to the admissions committee, you should take it. Take advantage of that space. And really with this statement, what we want to hear is, you're going to be joining a diverse campus community with students from all over the world. And so how are you going to contribute to that community? What are your expectations of your colleagues that's part of this community as well? So really think about, who you are as a person, what you want to show. Certainly there's been like ups and downs in all of our lives. And we want to talk about how that shaped us into the people that we are today. Important thing, this is mostly for research masters or Ph.D., but again, it can't hurt for professional masters as well, though it's not necessary. But for those doing a research degree, this is an important part of the US grad school application, and I don't think it's common in other places. And you really want to connect with faculty. You want to talk to potential advisors and talk about who you are. So the best way to do that initially is to send an email. Do your homework on each faculty member that you're reaching out to. Make sure that you sell yourself. You talk about yourself just like you did with your recommenders. Put in that bulleted highlight reel of all of the top things that you are wanting to showcase. And also attach your CV so that they can get information quickly. Do not be discouraged if you don't get a response. It is okay. You have two goals when you're reaching out to faculty. The first one, of course, is if you can to get a meeting, but the second one is to put your name out there. You never know which faculty members are sitting on an admissions committee. So you want to make sure that you are memorable and that if the person that you want to work with is on that committee, they are going to remember you reaching out. And so a really good practice and reaching out to faculty. One more time, I did want to reiterate that they may not be familiar with your university or your grading scale. Tell them about those things. Take the time to educate faculty in these emails that you're writing. It's really, really important. Okay, so fellowships I did want to touch on. I do want to also encourage you again to work with Education USA. Any fellowship that you apply for, you should note on your CV that that is in progress or that you have applied. Admissions committees pay attention to students who put themselves out there, who apply for fellowships. So make sure that you do that. The biggest ones for international students, I think, are Fulbright, such an impactful fellowship, and opportunity funds. And so talk to Education USA about what is available to you. Talk to the universities that you're applying to as well. They might have some insights there, but really, really important to think about applying to these fellowships at the same time as you're applying to graduate school. And I would also say that after you apply to grad school, you can update your application. If you get a fellowship or if you receive a new honor, you can add that as supplementary material to your application at any time after you apply. And you should update the programs that you're applying to about these things. PhD timeline, but this is really, we'll talk about the master's timeline as well, but right now is a great time to start reaching out to potential advisors, start reaching out to recommenders if you haven't already, and really think about the application and what it is asking you. Most grad school applications are now open and they would love to have it. I know at Rice, we would love to have your application, so do start doing your research on those things. If you're going to take any of the tests that are suggested, you can certainly do that now. Make sure when you're taking these tests, it's at least a month before the application deadline. You want to make sure that your materials are in well before the deadline so that you are going to be at the top of the pile. All of your information is ready to review. You do not want the admissions committee to wait for any of your materials. In spring, you may be invited to a virtual or in-person interview or a visit to campus in some way. And I would encourage you, wherever you can, talk to people during this time, virtually visit, or even in person if you can. Try and do that and see what that university and institution is going to be like. For master's programs, the timeline, the kind of how you're going to progress through will be similar, but it's much more condensed. And so the PhD timeline is a little bit longer. You may be doing a lot of research. You may be spending a lot of time on the application. Master's programs can, again, admit maybe 3 to 4 cohorts a year. And so this could be a very condensed process. And so you want to make sure that you move quickly and have all of your materials ready to go as soon as you can. Okay, I would also like to touch on interviews. And so this is a really common part of the US grad school application process. Not every school will do a formal interview. And when I say interview, in my head, I think about, okay, I'm in a suit and this person across from me is in a suit and we're talking and they're asking me a lot of questions. And an interview could be like that, but most of the time it's much more informal. And you could be talking to multiple people. I would also consider every exchange that you have with an institution. That's kind of part of the interview process as well. So think about those infrequent, informal communications and think about that as part of the interview process. Also think about your own questions. It's really important to get all of the information that you need to make a good decision for yourself. So make sure that you're getting answers to all of the questions that you ask and talk to as many people as possible because interviews are a two-way street. And so make sure that you ask your own questions as well. I think this is my last slide, but let's see. Oh, so yes, the main things that admissions committees want to see: show that you're creative, innovative, persistent. As Esther and Manuel can tell you in a few minutes, grad school is a lot of ups and downs. You're not always going to have the perfect day in the lab, and your experiments are not always going to go well. And an admissions committee is going to want to see that you're thinking, that's okay, I'm going to get through this. It's another day, and we're going to just jump to the next thing. So show that this is why the path you want that you want, and show that you're committed and you're going to be great. So don't worry too much about it. You're in good hands with Education USA, and they're going to guide you through this. So I'm going to stop there and maybe turn it over to our students, or Victoria, if she would like to chime in as well.
Thank you so much, Jennifer, for your wonderful presentation. I personally have learned so many insights into graduate school applications and also about Rice University in particular. And I would just like to welcome our wonderful graduate students here with us today. We are really delighted to have you with us and are thrilled to hear about your experiences and your advice to aspiring graduate students here in Ukraine.
Hi, it's really nice to meet everyone.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
And so Esther and Manuel,
That was good.
maybe talk a little bit about your journey to grad school, what you're studying, and kind of pro tips that you might have.
Yeah, so hi everyone, my name is Esther. I am an upcoming fourth year graduate student in the biochemistry and cell biology program. And I am in a synthetic biology lab. And so I think when coming into grad school, one of the things that I focused on primarily was my statement of purpose. I really wanted to show not just my personality, but also my passion for the research, and really transmit that through, because it's definitely a bigger part of the process than you would expect. I know people that came here with maybe like just 1 year of research, and because of their statement of purpose, the admissions committee saw a lot of potential, and now they're doing amazing things. And another thing that I would say is, once you get into the graduate program of your choice, definitely go in with an open mind. A lot of people are like, oh, I just want to do, let's say, structural biology, I'm just going to rotate in those types of labs. But really, you might surprise yourself with what you end up being passionate about, and the lab that you end up joining. So, yeah.
Okay, my turn. My name is Manuel Carmona. I'm a third year Ph.D. chemistry student, and I work with nanomaterials and nanomaterial synthesis. So through my years of, I did first a master's before coming to grad school, and I worked before grad school. So I did have some experience of other fields beforehand. And it really jumps like I didn't know a lot about like how to study in the US before, so I think this type of conferences are really good opportunity, and that's the first tip I would give to a lot of students, is to participate in as many as these as they can. As much information as they can gather is going to be better, like this, like talks to students, any information you can get. I know that, I mean, it's going to be a bit complicated, like to visit the campuses, like with the geographical distance, but any virtual visits, coffee chats, seminars, anything you can do is really helpful. I really wish I had that when I was looking for universities, but I got really lucky and I got in Rice. So that's another story. But I also agree with the part of the statement of purpose is really important. I mean, normally when you apply, like if you fulfill already all the requirements, like you're like, that part is that, and the important part is who you are. And an advice that actually someone else gave me is like, it's not just why Rice would be a good fit for you, but also why you would be a good fit for Rice. So it's both parts. It has to be the university for you, and the university also has you have to be in the community of Rice, and that's really important, and it's something to showcase when you write your statement of purpose. Also, I think the last thing is I want to emphasize what Esther said about me having an open mind. I did my master's in synthesis and catalysis. I've never touched a nanoparticle before, and now that's what I do. So it's one of those things that at the end of the day, you come here and you see all the research that's been done, and then you realize, wow, this sounds super interesting, and it didn't even cross my mind. So it's important to be open and just enjoy the process. It's a bit stressful, but it's fun.
Thank you so much, Esther and Manuel, for sharing your experiences and sharing your knowledge with our students. I would like to encourage our participants and our viewers from home to not hesitate to reach out to us, to put your questions in the comments. We're more than happy to assist you on your journey to US study. And while we wait for questions, I actually have a question of my own, if you don't mind. And I often get questions from students. What are some of the common mistakes that admission officers often encounter and that aspiring graduate students make and would better avoid? So can you share your experiences with that, please?
I would say the most common one that I see is not proofreading things well, and or like turning in an early draft of something that you had, or turning in materials for the wrong university. So, every year we get materials from students who are like, I'd love to go to Stanford. I would love to help you with that, but I work at Rice and I can't really do that. So just really be careful about proofreading your materials and making sure that everything's ready to go. And then I think one more would be, if you're going for a research degree, underestimating that faculty contact part. So that is, I think, relatively common and really good practice for applicants to do, to reach out to faculty members. And I know, at least for me, when I was applying to grad school, I think that could be really intimidating, is reaching out to faculty. But go ahead and do it. I think it's really important to make those connections. And then you learn a lot about the people that you might be working with that way as well. So that would be a tip that I would really stress. It's not necessarily formal application, but really good thing to do.
Thank you so much, Jennifer, for your answer. Esther, Manuel, would you like to add anything to that? Maybe from your personal experience, some of the things you wished you had paid better attention to. So you have been successful in your application, so probably not.
I mean, since we're not part of the admission, there's some things we don't know, but I highly recommend also interview, like when you are talking with a professor or like the people in the lab or whoever you're interested, that it's a both way street, that you're also they're not just interviewing just you, you're also interviewing them. Because they might like ask you a bunch of questions and you just say yes and you don't answer back, and it's like, then how do you know if that's what you are interested in? And also should be before that, but before like choosing, like really study the research groups, like, because a lot of times it has happened that students come and be like, oh yeah, I really like this lab because they do this, and they haven't done that in years. Like that was done, they started with that the lab, but now they have moved on from that research and they're not doing it anymore, and you're like, oh, they're not doing it, and now I don't like what they're doing anymore, and then you get into that trouble. So keep up to point, like what is that lab doing? It's quite relevant before talking to the professor.
Thank you so much for your answer. And actually, another thing that a lot of aspiring graduate students are reaching out to us with and are wondering about is how to reach out to and connect with potential professors and mentors. Are there any opportunities for networking, or what would be the best way to reach out to a professor that you're really looking forward to working with or would like to form a connection with?
I'm going to give this one to Esther and Manuel for their pro tips.
My experience for this was a little bit different because I actually did REUs at Rice during the summers. And so through that experience, I was able to meet a lot of professors, a lot of the graduate students, and I felt a little bit less intimidating in reaching out to them. But I would say that it's very important to choose maybe, I would say 3 professors that you want to come in touch to, like, and talk to about their research at the universities that you're applying to. Definitely, it can be very intimidating, but you always have to remember that the worst thing that they can do is just not reply to you. You're not going to be losing anything just by emailing them and saying, hey, I am applying to this program. I'm very interested in your lab because of these reasons, and I would like to discuss your research. And so sometimes they'll reply, sometimes they won't. They are busy. But if you can't get a hold of the professor, I would definitely reach out to the grad students as well. That's something that I also did in a lot of other schools that I applied to. And the grad students are more susceptible to talk to you. And sometimes they communicate to their advisor of, oh, hey, I met this wonderful person that's applying, and they'll connect you. So there's different routes to go about that, but I definitely would say that is one of the most important things to do when applying to the graduate schools.
I would add to that I also had a similar pathway like Esther. I first came to work at Rice, and then I became a student. So yeah, I met the people in person, which is gonna be a bit complicated, but a lot of the times like you have to like check a lot. If the research group is quite big, they normally have a research manager or a lab manager. That's normally the person that gets the emails first, and then they pass them. So it's a good thing to check. Like when you check the people of a lab, like in their webpage, to check, oh, they have a lab manager. Okay, then probably that's the person I need to contact. That's a tip in case you cannot localize them. But another important thing is that now we have this resource, which is the graduate ambassador, so us. But there's just like us, where I'm from chemistry and from cell biology, Esther. There are from almost any field you can think of at Rice. So it's a good way that if you need like a direct connection to contact them. And also we provide something called ambassador blogs, in which we write a lot of our experience and a lot of the common questions we receive, like in these type of seminars and also on coffee chats. We make a blog out of it so that people get a more deeper answer, so that they know like, okay, this is like the step-by-step part, and we try to make them in a way that it's on our own words, so they're easy to read, so they're also not so heavy. But I would recommend it here. I think, oh yeah, Jennifer has the QR code here on her screen, so you can always like check it, and there you will give to our webpage, and there's our contacts of all of the ambassadors and also all the different resources. So it's a good way to start. If you cannot contact the professors itself, then you can just contact us, and we can try to help you out.
Thank you so much for sharing your insights and for just giving our students several ideas about how to go about reaching out to professors and being successful on their path to US study and to applying to graduate programs. And one other thing that I often get asked about would probably be funding, especially concerning master programs. So I was wondering, could you share any of the opportunities that Rice Universities offers to Ukrainian students, maybe in particular, or just to international students who are interested in applying to master's programs?
Yeah, so at the Rice level, in particular for master's programs, there are programs that will offer scholarships for qualified students. And there's no restriction on where you need to be from to apply for those scholarships. Typically, I've seen those in like the School of Business or in the engineering fields. I will say that just universally in the US, it's more difficult to get scholarships for master's programs. And that's why I think applying to things like Fulbright or opportunity funds, whatever you can do to apply for different fellowships is really important. And any university should be able to tell you more about specific fellowships to their institution as well. So definitely ask that question as you're researching programs.
Thank you so much for your reply, Jennifer, and just for sharing your knowledge with our students. And a final question on my side would be a rather general one, and that would be, what is the one thing that you think that students interested in graduate studies should do right now? What is the number one thing they should look into or start preparing before they begin with their admission process?
I'm going to start with a really early one, and then I'm going to turn it over to Esther and Manuel. But the earliest one, I think, is ultimately, what do you want to do? So why do you want to get this degree? And then, try and figure out, okay, if this is something that I really need to get to the next level, to get to where I want to be in my career or my life or what have you, then it could be a good fit. But that whatever you're doing, you really think about why you want to go to grad school first before anything else. And then maybe Esther and Manuel could share their pro tips too.
I mean, like, if you already decided, okay, I want to go to grad school, the first thing would be the where. It's really important that you research like the universities that they can fit to you, and also like at least on STEM fields to search for, like Esther was saying, not just one research group that you're interested, but they have more, because there's the possibility that group is not available. And then like once you know, okay, I have these universities, then search what are the specific requirements. They normally, all of them have like the core, like the GPA, the CV, rec letters, but maybe there's a university that does require the GRE, or maybe there's the university that you're interested that requires extra documents. So it's important to have those in mind. So that way, when you have the core, you can focus on which ones you need afterwards.
Yeah, and then going off of that, I think, one of the other important things is a lot of graduate students make the mistake of only applying to like very difficult schools to get into, like Harvard, Stanford, Brown, like those. And I would say it's very important to make a list of maybe about 10 graduate schools that you want to apply to. 3 of them are ones that you're sure you're going to get into. You meet all of the requirements. They're not that difficult to get into. 3 that are medium hanging fruit, you have a good chance to get into. And then, the rest, 3 of them that are like very difficult, and they're like the high stakes one. And so making a ranking like that will give you a lot more options, and in the end it'll put less stress. It's going to be stressful doing all of those applications, but it'll be less stressful in the end when you start receiving those interviews and stuff. So I definitely recommend that. And then once you have the schools picked out, I definitely think one of the things you should do is research your top 3 groups maybe from each school that you want to rotate in, and already start sending those emails, trying to interact with faculty and students so you get your name out there.
Thank you so much to all of you for your wonderful answers. And Jennifer, thank you so much for an amazing presentation, for giving our viewers and Ukrainian students here at home just an inside look into the application process and the life of a graduate student, and introducing them to the opportunities that Rice University offers them and the support that they can receive, in particular from the student ambassadors. Thank you so much, Esther and Manuel, for sharing your experiences and sharing your knowledge with the students. And I would just like to encourage all of you at home, if you still have any questions or are unsure about how to go about realizing your dream and applying to the university of your dreams, you can always sign up for a free consultation with Education USA, and we'll be happy to provide you with the resources and materials that will help you on your journey and guide you through this process. So we have reached the end of our today's meeting. I would just like to ask all of you, are there any final pieces of advice or parting words you would like to share with the students?
Don't be scared to contact people. I know it might be stressful. I know it might be like, you might think like, oh, are they gonna even reply? They might not, but just keep contacting. It's always good.
I would say focus on the statement of purpose. You're all qualified to enter a master's program and a graduate program. Focus on showing who you are and what you could contribute to enhancing the graduate program.
Mine is work with Education USA. They are experts in this. They will guide you through every step of the process. So like Victoria said, set up a consultation, keep coming to these webinars, talk to as many people as possible, and get their advice.
Thank you so much for all of you for your brilliant advice, for being just motivators and inspirations to our students. I do hope that we can keep cooperating in the future and we'll meet again. Thank you so much for being with us, for once again imparting your knowledge to the Ukrainian students, and to our viewers at home. I hope you persevere, that you believe in your dream, and that you keep working towards achieving it. Stay safe, stay with Education USA, and I'll see you next Thursday. Bye.